Yo, what is up guys? Delboy here, aka Blue Collar Sports TV. Hopefully you guys are doing well. If you're new here, smash that like, hit subscribe, all of that good stuff. Apologies if you can hear something in the background, it's just my washing machine. Just a quick preview and prediction for a fight that goes down this weekend at the Nottingham Arena. Leigh versus Anthony Cacace. Interesting fight in my opinion. Fight takes place at super featherweight, and the IBO title, for what that's worth, will be on the line. Good fight in my opinion. A fight in which many are calling a 50-50, and I see it as quite a close fight on paper at least. I could see either guy winning. But most importantly, I think this fight should gel quite well, and it should be pretty fun, considering both fighters' styles. You have like a boxer-puncher in Leigh and like a pressure fighter in Anthony Cacace. Good fight. Now, let's briefly break down the tale of the tape, I guess, right? Leigh comes into this fight with a record of 28 wins and 3 defeats, 17 of his 28 wins coming by way of knockout. Anthony Cacace has a record of 23 wins, 1 defeat, 8 of his 23 wins coming by way of knockout. Don't let the 8 knockouts fool you. I think he hits harder than his record indicates. And, we saw that in the Joe Cordina fight, of course. But still, on paper, you would say Leigh is the bigger puncher. However, again, I'm talking about the power. I do think Cacace takes a shot better, which could be key in this fight. Anyway, we move on. Leigh is listed as 5'7" with a 67-inch reach, though Anthony Cacace is 5'10" with, I believe, a 71-inch reach. So, he's 3 inches taller and he's got a 4-inch reach advantage over Leigh. That is significant. Anthony Cacace is a southpaw, Leigh is orthodox. Both guys are 36 years young. So both guys are coming towards the end of their careers respectively. I will say though, I do believe there are more miles on the clock with Leigh. Number one, he's had more fights, but he's had hard fights of course. Like really, really hard fights in recent years. Tough fight with Warrington last time out. Tough fight with Lara in the first fight when he got knocked out. Tough fight against Michael Conlon. Tough fight against Jazza Dickens. He's had a lot of hard fights throughout his career, has Leigh, but way back in the day, really hard fight with Gavin McDonnell where he got stopped. Over the years, I think he sustained more punishment, and I would say that there's more in the tank with Anthony Cacace, and from what I've seen, he's not really showing any signs of slowing down. In fact, in his last couple of fights, I think he's gone to a new level. Plus, again, we have to state that Cacace's been more active as well. He's had 2 fights in 2024 against good competition. He knocked out Joe Cordina in May of 2024, 8 rounds. Then he had a 12-rounder with Josh Warrington where he won on points. So he's been a lot more active as well, has Anthony Cacace. Leigh last fought in October of 23 when he beat Warrington by stoppage, of course, in round 7. So Leigh been out in the wilderness for a while, I think he's had some promotional issues. He couldn't get a fight for whatever reason. So he comes into this fight more or less 18 months outside the ring. That could be significant, and it's something that I am bearing in mind here. But yeah, the stylistic matchup. For me, Anthony Cacace is stylistically both good and bad for Leigh. Cacace likes to come forwards, especially in recent fights. Hooks to the body, likes to lead with hooks with that lead hand. Of course, he's a southpaw, so it's a right hook. He can whip that to body and head. Decent jab on the front foot. Likes to put punches in combinations when he has a guy stationary. He's shown a willingness in the last couple of fights in particular to exchange, to trade, to take risk. And he's shown decent power in both fights with Warrington and Cordina. I know he never stopped Warrington, but there were times in that fight where I really felt he put Warrington in his place with heavy punches. And that sort of pressure against Leigh I always think can have success, because Leigh just one of those guys where I don't want to call him a glass cannon in a disrespectful sense, but he looks vulnerable in his fights. Like, he can be hurt, he can be dropped. We've seen him stopped before. But, you know, at the same time, while being vulnerable, when you're taking risks against him, he can uncork big power shots, particularly with his right hand. And he's really shown power in recent fights to turn fights around. You know, he was struggling in that last fight with Josh Warrington. I felt Warrington was winning that fight. But, you know, Warrington was being very aggressive. And, you know, he walked into a shot, a right-left combination. It was, I believe, if memory serves me correct. And we've seen that power bail out Leigh Wood in the past, most notably the Michael Conlan fight, of course. And he can carry that power late. You know, he stopped Conlan in the 12th round. He stopped Kanzu in the 12th round with a right hand. He's shown that he can carry his power late. And he's one of those guys that while he's standing, he always has somewhat of a chance. Especially against aggressive fighters, fighters who take risks, fighters who are not exactly hard to hit. And again, Cacace does like to take those risks, you know. I'm pretty convinced that he's going to try to pressure Leigh Wood in this fight, so those shots could be there for Leigh, particularly considering he's got a great straight right hand. Having said that, the issue with that is, you know, as I said, Cacace's taller, so if he's jabbing with that southpaw lead and he's bringing it back to his chin, it's going to be it will actually be hard for Leigh Wood to counter that jab with his own right hand because of a height difference and reach difference. But again, having said that, I do still believe that counterpunch opportunities will be there for Leigh Wood. Cacace, when he's aggressive, does like to fight kind of front. He's front foot heavy, obviously, but he likes to kind of fight in a little bit of a crouch, gives up a bit of his height. And one thing about that is his guard, when he does that, is actually relatively wide, and he kind of leans over a little bit to where his head is kind of leaning over his lead knee. So, again, uppercuts for Leigh Wood in this fight. Step back, uppercut, draw the lead of Cacace. That could be a great counterpunch shot for Leigh Wood. And even the straight right, you know, when Cacace is being aggressive, the straight right could certainly pierce that guard of Cacace. I think the openings will be there for Leigh Wood. But one thing about Cacace is he seems to maintain a steady work rate. He seems very physically strong, I will say. Showed that against Cordina, out-muscled Cordina, who was not a small super featherweight. He out-muscled Warrington. Yeah, he was bigger than Warrington, but, you know, Warrington's always been a pretty strong fighter. I'm not convinced that Leigh Wood can hold off Cacace in terms of, like, strength. I'm not convinced he can. I think Leigh Wood's chance in this fight is to land perfect shots. Perfect hard punches that cause a difference, that make a difference, that hurt Cacace. Because I don't see Leigh Wood winning this fight if he can't hurt Cacace. I think he more or less needs to win this by stoppage. To be honest with you, I can't really see him winning on points because I don't see him matching Cacace in terms of output and pressure. I don't think he's a good enough boxer to get on his toes and outbox Cacace like that. So for me, he has to offset that pressure with power and counters and precision. And we know Leigh Wood can do that. The opportunities will be there, but again, Cacace has shown a pretty good chin. Looking at this fight, I see Cacace in a better spot. He's been more active. He's not really showing any signs of slowing down, whereas Leigh Wood hasn't been active, and I don't know, he always looks like one of those fighters who's one punch away from disaster, even if he's winning a fight or he's in a fight. So yeah, man, it's for me, Cacace is favourite here. I like his pressure in this bout, and I think that pressure will make a difference. I think he'll end up walking through some hard moments. Maybe he'll get rocked. He might even get dropped by Leigh Wood, but I think he's durable enough to come back and get through that, to keep on applying that pressure, get to that body of Leigh Wood, test those legs, test that heart, and I've got a feeling that Leigh Wood's going to struggle to offset that pressure after a certain point in time. So yeah, for me, I'm going to go with Cacace in this fight, and I'm going to go with Cacace by stoppage. I think he's going to stop Leigh Wood, I would say late on. I think it will take a bit of time. You know, Leigh Wood's always shown good heart. You know, when he has setbacks, he will try to get back and, you know, land that shot. And sometimes he has done that, of course, in the fight with Conlon, most notably. But I think this might be a bridge too far. Leigh Wood's also coming up in weight, of course. Leigh Wood's last fight was at featherweight, so, you know, he's coming up in weight against a big dude in Anthony Cacace. So yeah, I've got Cacace by stoppage here. I've got Cacace by late stoppage. Good fight though. I'm not ruling out Leigh Wood. I've just got the feeling that this is one step too far. You know, he's had a really interesting career, Leigh Wood. He was toiling around domestic level for years, and all of a sudden he got to world level, gave us some great fights. The Conlon fight, for example, the Warrington fight was fun. But, yeah, I think this is the end of a road for Leigh Wood. I've got Cacace by late knockout. Anyway, share your thoughts below. Beanie Guy Del Boy. Peace.